Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we're going over the final chapter of this year, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter 17. So I have to be honest with you guys, I do have mixed feelings about this chapter. On one hand, I did like the tone in which the chapter was setting up in terms of it being a calm before the storm. I really did appreciate that, and I felt that reading this chapter from beginning to end. However, I feel as though the chapter made me not take the Shinju as seriously as of a threat like I did in the previous chapters. And I hope that changes moving forward. But right now, I can't necessarily say I like this direction. And I get what Kishimoto is trying to do. He's basically implying that the Shinju are like children. They're highly impressionable. They're affected by society and the characters that they interact with. But I want to see that same menace that the Shinju had when they were first introduced in chapter 4. Like, I want to actually feel like they're a legitimate threat rather than just being told about it. The chapters covered this time around is okay. We get to see Shinki's teammates, Araya and Yodo, in their full time skip designs. I think they're decent designs. The colors in the background and the bricks and the graffiti like art also gives me like 90s and 2000s vibes for whatever reason, but I'm all for it. And in general, I do appreciate 2 Blue Vortex for utilizing the side characters more often than Boruto Part 1's manga did. So shout out to the writers for that. Credit where credit is due. And the title's chapter this time around is called Wild Beast Cubs. And it's clearly referencing the Shinjus in the series and how young and impressionable they are. Alright, with that being said, let's dive right into the review. So we open up the chapter with Sarada once again recalling the conversation she had with Sumire in the previous chapter. I think Sarada feels a certain way about this situation for two reasons. For one, Sumire in her conversation insinuated that Sarada was a selfish individual, at least when it comes to Boruto and herself. Sarada knew that Sumire liked Boruto, yet she allowed herself to be the one to embrace him at the end of chapter 5. Sumire also was upset with Sarada because she wasn't respecting Boruto's wishes. Boruto is operating in a way that he is for a specific purpose, even though the two of them don't know about singularities at this point. But Sarada wants to be active and be involved in Boruto's crusade against the Shinju regardless. In my opinion, I think Sarada shouldn't feel bad about anything. I think she's being too hard on herself. Sumire and Boruto, for one, are not an item. They're not together. And Boruto's allowed to be with whoever he wants to be with. And on top of that, I actually do respect Sarada for actively wanting to support her friend Boruto. In my opinion, that's what Boruto needs. But it also is bothering her to a point where Mitsuki takes notice to her demeanor. And Mitsuki's a real friend because that's something real friends are able to do with each other. You know, even if no words are exchanged, you can sense their feelings and you know that a good friend or a close friend is going through something. So we cut away to see Matsuri and Ryu staring at the toad decoy left behind to lure them out. Matsuri says that according to the trees, Boruto was the one in the hidden sand that placed the toad there before taking his leave. So Matsuri can use actual trees to gather information from places she has never been to before. This explains how she knew about Team 10 being in a lot of pain back in 2 Blue Vortex chapter 5. And that was essentially around the time when Moegi got turned into a tree. And this also explains how she was able to pick up on Kashin Koji's trail in the Land of Wind because the trees in that general area told her that he was around. So Ryu is confused by what Matsuri is saying and basically says, like, this is a desert, lady. There are no trees here. And then Matsuri says that trees exist everywhere and that the trees in this particular location just happen to be below ground feeding her information. So Yodo uses her sonic wave abilities to listen in on Ryu and Matsuri's conversation. So now the heroes are aware that Matsuri can listen to the voices of trees to figure out where Boruto and Kashin Koji are. So it's not a matter of if they'll find Boruto and Kashin Koji, it's really a matter of when. So she has to be eliminated at all costs. Yodo then asks Konohamaru a very valid question about the Thorn Soul bulbs. If they destroy Ryu and get his Thorn Soul bulb, will this bring Shinki back? And Konohamaru says yes, if this intel is precise, then he will come back. And Yodo is now even more determined than ever to win. Araya tells her not to do anything reckless, but I suspect there's a high chance she is going to do something reckless in the next chapter. So Team 7 and Team Shinki understand what they have to do, and they set their eyes on Ryu and Matsuri. And so Konohamaru and the others put on an Oscar-worthy performance. They act like they don't know who the Shinju are and ask, like, what are they doing there? Matsuri looks completely shocked, but Ryu, on the other hand, is ready to fight, but he wants to hear Matsuri's orders first because he respects his elders. Matsuri looks like she's meeting her favorite celebrity for the first time and is completely caught off guard. Konohamaru explains that they are Leaf Shinobi and that they're following Boruto's trail. Ryu incorrectly deduces that the ninja don't know who they are, which really shouldn't make any sense, but Ryu once again looks for Matsuri's guidance on what to do before questioning anything. And just like how Ada behaved when she wanted to meet Kawaki, Matsuri starts to blush and is feeling very off about herself. So Matsuri clearly has feelings for Konohamaru, likely due to Moegi having suppressed feelings for him as well, or simply for the fact that Matsuri is just impressionable and just having all those different memories from Moegi is what's making her feel a certain way about Konohamaru. And I honestly can't take her serious anymore after this. Like, I mean, she went from being the second biggest threat next to Jura to being like a fangirl at this point. It's pretty funny. But she then proceeds to ask Ryu to talk on behalf of both of them. Ryu is shocked and baffled by how out of character Matsuri is acting. Then Konohamaru proceeds to think back to his conversation with the 8th Hokage when being briefed on his mission in the Land of Wind. The goal of this mission is not only to defeat the Shinju in combat, but more specifically to collect their Thorn Soul bulbs. Shikamaru even brings up to Konohamaru that he saw one when Boruto defeated Hidari back in chapter 13 and then Kawaki blew him away. So we officially learned that how the claw grind victims can be set free. If the bulb is exposed to the tree containing that specific victim that's connected to that Thorn Soul bulb, then they can be released. Matsuri's bulb would release Moegi, Ryu's bulb would release Shinki, and so on and so forth, which we all kind of figured that was the case. Konohamaru also gets informed that getting the Thorn Soul bulb is critical. If they were to defeat Matsuri and or Ryu, but the bulbs get left behind, then the two Shinju would just keep reviving themselves. They're basically immortal unless certain circumstances are achieved. The same was true for Hidari. Boruto and Kawaki destroyed Hidari's body, releasing the Thorn Soul bulb. But once it got back in Jura's hands, Hidari did come back. Konohamaru understands the assignment, but then asks Shikamaru a very valid question. How does he know all of this? After all, Boruto did not reveal that information to the Leaf officials during his interrogation. Shikamaru apologizes because he knows he can't reveal that information. Shikamaru just says that that information is classified. But in reality, Shikamaru is also a singularity of fate. And since he has knowledge on potential futures thanks to his interactions with Kashin Koji. Just like in the previous chapter, the more people who know about the future, the more singularities of fate will emerge. And if there's more singularities of fate, they'll end up making different choices because they know about specific outcomes that are going to happen before they actually happen. And that will make it more difficult to change the timeline for the better. Shikamaru then goes on to explain what the Shinju are. They're monsters with extraordinary fighting abilities. They want to devour high-value targets like Konohamaru and Sarada, and that's why they're treated as foes because they are actually a threat to humanity. However, there is no conclusive evidence that they are instinctually evil. They're more so animals acting on instinct, which is correct to deduce that because Jura actually explained to the other Shinju that in order to find one's life purpose, they must rely on their instinct. That is Jura's philosophy. And then Shikamaru decides to parallel the Shinju to newly born offspring of wild beasts. So I'll use this example. A lion doesn't kill its prey because it's evil and wants to see other animals suffer. It does so out of instinct and a desire for survival. The same is true for the Shinju. The Shinju are highly impressionable like children. Just like we saw in 2 Blue Vortex chapter 5, this is around the time when Jura declared that he wanted to devour Naruto. The other Shinju were shocked to hear something like that because that wasn't what they were made for. But Jura influenced them all to essentially want to eat non-Otsutsuki characters. Jura is a bad influence. But if the other Shinju are separated from Jura, they can be influenced to walk down a different path. It's just like cubs for any wild animal species. they can be tamed and raised by humans and get along with those humans and see humans as a species worth protecting and getting along with. So Shikamaru tells Konohamaru to become friends with them, to tame the wild beasts while they're still innocent cublings. The 8th Hokage candidate then tells Konohamaru to get them to drop their guards and then betray them. And Konohamaru is clearly not comfortable with that, which raises a lot of questions on ethics and morality. If the Shinju are sentient beings and are capable of shifting their goals into something better if under a direct positive influence, is it really right to take their lives away? They didn't ask to be here after all. The claw grinds were mindlessly eating people, and the claw grinds, but more specifically code, are the reason why the Shinju even exist in the first place. Shikamaru understands Konohamaru's reaction because Konohamaru is a humanitarian just like Naruto. It is messed up, but they should be considered nothing less but than foes. Their existence alone is at the expense of innocent people, and they could potentially bring forth the darkest timeline. This is why they have to go. I wanted to focus a little bit on what Shikamaru says, that Naruto probably wouldn't take this course of action. But then again, Shikamaru is not Naruto. Shikamaru's attitude is that it's either them or us. Humanity is entitled to their own survival. But you can still tell this was alienating Konohamaru a little bit because he's been a shinobi who strived to be like Naruto and always looked up to him. It goes back to one of the recurring themes of Boruto, which is humanitarianism versus utilitarianism. Both philosophies work, but not for every single situation, and sometimes you have to make some morally gray decisions. Yodo and Araya stay hidden in the background for obvious reasons. They, of course, have already interacted with Matsuri, so if Matsuri sees them, she'll become hostile almost immediately. And it's very clear that Yodo and Araya will also help Team 7 in jumping Ryu. And so we get to see Team 7 and the Shinju formally introduce themselves. And it's very, very weird to see. Like, it's like a normal conversation, even though these are world-ending threats interacting with shinobi. My hat really goes off to Kashin Koji in the situation. He really caught Matsuri off guard. Matsuri's blind affection for Konohamaru allowed Team 7 to get close. If Matsuri was in her right frame of mind, she'd likely stop and ask herself, wait a minute, why would Leaf Ninja come all the way to the Land of Wind for some obscure piece of evidence? And then she would also note that none of these three are sensory ninja. And how did they know exactly where to go in a foreign village? And she would instantly know it was a setup. Mitsuki, being slick, says that he found a random piece of metal that may lead them to Boruto. And this is something I really appreciated. This scene clearly shows the advantage shinobi have over the Shinju, and that's deception. While these Shinju are based on shinobi, they wouldn't bother looking for the meanings behind the hidden meanings. So they're falling for very obvious things that Moegi and Shinki would have never fallen for in a million years. Konohamaru tells the group to split up to look for clues, and it's clear that he's also doubling down on how Matsuri feels about him, and this is causing her to become even more flustered. The feeling of love is very foreign to her, she doesn't understand it, and she's very confused in this moment. Sarada then calls out to Ryu and says that, hey, she just happened to find more Boruto stuff over here. And I really like Ryu's animated reaction. Like, he's very charismatic in like a weird type of way. And once again, he shows how gullible he is like a child. Mitsuki then says that their other comrades are over there waiting for them. And then Ryu points out that he doesn't want to leave Matsuri behind. But Konohamaru tells Ryu not to worry and that he'll take good care of her. Ryu decides to tag along with Mitsuki and Sarada, and he says that he's glad he ran into Leaf Ninja and that he thinks they're nice people, just like he was told by his boss, Jura. He then tells Sarada and Mitsuki that Jura has a lot of respect for their village and that he's the boss of all the Shinju. So Mitsuki and Sarada now know of the existence of Jura. Ryu then explains that he's glad they spoke first because he intended on slaughtering any ninja that the Shinju ran into, showing his homicidal tendencies. Sarada then says, "Aw, come on, don't say stuff like that. We're all pals here." And then we cut to Yodo looking off into the distance and saying to herself, or rather thinking about Shinki and saying that she's going to save him. And once again, I feel like she's going to mess up in the next chapter. We cut back to Konohamaru's flashback with Shikamaru, and the reason why Konohamaru was selected for this mission in the first place was because of Matsuri's romantic feelings towards him. I honestly thought the reason would be because of the fact that Konohamaru was most familiar with Moegi's fighting style and jutsu, and therefore he would be one of the better candidates in fighting Matsuri, who is essentially based off of Moegi, but apparently that was not the case at all. Her state of confusion would send Matsuri over the edge, and this would give Team 7 the advantage. That was the point of all of this, advantage, since Matsuri would appear in 2 out of 3 of these potential futures, so the likelihood of her showing up was a lot higher than just Ryu. And Team 7 needed every advantage possible in this case. Konohamaru once again feels a bit like it's a bit much to backstab someone who will grow to trust him, but Shikamaru doubles down and tells him to be heartless because she is a risk to human life simply by existing. And Shikamaru uses Koji's intel, and he knew of the possibility of Matsuri or Ryu appearing or both of them showing up. And that's why they needed to be separated in order for this plan to work, and that Konohamaru needed to take charge of this situation. I honestly feel like after this chapter and Matsuri being around Konohamaru, I feel this will change her perspective. I don't think she will want to devour Konohamaru anymore after this, which means that this could potentially cause a rift between her and Jura down the line. Konohamaru sits down with Matsuri and asks if she's feeling any better, to which she responds that she isn't feeling like herself. Konohamaru, knowing of her feelings for him, manipulates her even more by saying, "It's not weird for you to feel this way," and he's just putting more crazy thoughts in her head. We cut to the next scene as we get to see Kashin Koji via his steam toad talking to Ada, and he essentially is asking her to use her Senrigan to relay what's going on in the Hidden Sand Village. Ada is reluctant because of the fact that she knows Mamushi can detect her, and she's genuinely creeped out and disgusted by him. But Koji reassures her that Mamushi isn't there, so she can look without any consequences. So this is how Boruto and Koji will get the play-by-play without actually exposing Koji's chakra to Matsuri using his ninja toads to watch in the Hidden Sand Village instead. So then we cut to Koji and Boruto waiting for events to play out. They appear to be in Orochimaru's abandoned hideout, and I'm assuming this is a different one from what we saw in the Land of Wind because of the fact that we already saw Matsuri and Gaara fighting in there. And why expose yourself at that point in an area where Matsuri already tracked your chakra? That just makes zero logical sense. So Koji tells Boruto that things are going well so far and that Konohamaru and the others managed to successfully separate Matsuri and Ryu. And then Boruto asks what's going to happen next. So Koji then explains the ideal future he saw with prescience, that Konohamaru keeps Matsuri occupied and separated from Ryu, and Sarada, Mitsuki, and Team Shinki manage to kill Ryu and take his Thorn Soul Bulb. They then regroup with Konohamaru and take down Matsuri as a single unit. Boruto then asks, what is the likelihood that they will fail? And Koji vaguely says that it's not that high. But the fact that Koji said it in a vague manner means that this plan isn't foolproof at all as we think it is. And I believe the reason why it's not foolproof is because Yodo will make a decision point that either blows Team 7's cover earlier than anticipated and gets Matsuri's attention, or she stays back and allows things to play out covertly. But Boruto gets angry at hearing this from Kashin Koji and says that he wants a number, a specific percentage number. And these aren't pawns to him. These are his friends. You're playing with my friends' lives here, so you better give me some answers. Koji then tells Boruto that regardless if they succeed or fail, he is not allowed to help them. Because just like Himawari leaving the village, if Boruto were to enter the battle with any of the Shinju right now at the very least, then Jura would make an appearance. And if that happens, Boruto will definitely die this time. Koji then says something very peculiar, that Boruto is the one thing that we cannot lose. And I always believed there was way more to why Koji selected Boruto as a singularity of fate over Kawaki. I believe Boruto is needed to be in the part of the future where Koji's master plan will exist in preventing the darkest timeline. meaning Boruto is the catalyst for bringing forth a better timeline. And I think Boruto has something special up his sleeve that will eventually make a huge difference. And this is just speculation, but I think Koji is referring to Boruto being so important for this future and is because of the Jougan. And there's evidence to support this as well because of what Toneri had told Boruto in the anime when Boruto had that dream. He said that Boruto's eye was the star of hope against the destruction that will eventually come to pass. And we also see the Jougan appear in the first scene of the series where everything was destroyed. So Boruto's Jougan will give humanity a fighting chance. And I think Koji saw the Jougan awaken in a potential future, but we don't know the circumstances that truly will lead to this point just yet. And that's why I believe it's more important for Koji to preserve Boruto's life even over that of Kawaki's. Speaking of world-ending threats, we cut to the next scene inside of the Leaf Village as Jura shows up in the bookstore. The store owner looks astounded by Jura's interest in wanting to read so many books and novels. The sensory team picks up on Jura's chakra signature and alerts Shikamaru. Shikamaru tells them to leave Jura alone, don't evacuate anyone, and do not engage. And my hat really has to go off to Shikamaru. He's doing everything to keep his village safe. He's lying to people. He's dealing with overpowered cyborgs. He's dealing with a mad scientist, Otsutsuki children, tree people, and more specifically, Jura showing up and visiting the village as he pleases just to buy books. It's a wonder Shikamaru hasn't gone insane. Jura tells the store clerk to keep the change that he essentially was giving him and that, you know, he'll be back for future purchases. And the clerk low-key respects Jura and is kind of happy he has a loyal customer even though he's a humanoid monster. And I believe this is Kashin Koji's plan. He wants to exploit Jura's fascination with humanity, society, culture, and world history. Koji wants to engineer a version of Jura that decides to take a different path, or at the very least make Jura more emotional and vulnerable. This is why he doesn't want anyone to engage with Jura. If Jura gets provoked, then he will of course wipe out nations in a literal blink of an eye. But if his appreciation continues to grow undisturbed for humanity, society, and culture, he might decide to spare everyone, or at the very least, lose complete interest in harvesting a chakra fruit. We cut to the final scene of the chapter as the true villain of the franchise gets ready to take his smoke. Smoking has always been a metaphor for Amato's deception, and Kawaki removing his cigarette is a subtle message from Kishimoto and the writers that there's not going to be deception when it comes to Kawaki this time around. So I suspect we're going to get a lot of crazy revelations next chapter between these two characters. Amato says that he was expecting Kawaki to drop by, and Kawaki says that he has a lot he wants to say to Amato, but first, Amato is going to draw all of his latent power to its fullest extent. And Amato being a snake is obviously going to mix truths with lies to manipulate the situation further. But Amato may be affected by omnipotence. It's very obvious he knows Kawaki's true identity. It would be insane if he wasn't affected at all. But I do believe he was affected. These are definitely Kawaki's first steps in walking down the path to being like the version of him we saw at the beginning of this franchise. And I believe this is what Boruto's biggest mistake is. I understand that these are desperate times. Kawaki needs to be able to protect himself against the Shinju, and he will be a very great asset in the war against them because of his Sukuna Hikona being an excellent counter to the Shinju's claw marks. But I also feel that the more Kawaki taps into Ishiki's power, the more he loses his humanity from a metaphorical perspective. But that's all I got for this video. We'll see what happens in the series moving forward into the new year. And until next time, guys, peace.